Hey Tim, happy June 1.
Yes, yes, and the pubs and clubs and restaurants and everything is open. But interestingly, I don't know if you found this interesting, and I don't think there'd be a lot of sympathy out there, but you can go and put your hands all over poker machines without getting COVID-19, but you can't go to the gym.
Oh,
interesting
that is
observation.
interesting. Yes, that is an interesting observation. I didn't realise that. Yeah. Oh well. I'm happy for the gym not to be open. It's saving me a fortune in gym fees at the moment.
Yeah. And you can deal with your conscience, can't you? Which is
absolutely. Now we had a pretty good weekend from a results perspective. Obviously, auction numbers were low. The preliminary clearance rate from CoreLogic was 68.1% over 469 auctions, and if you consider last year, it was same weekend was 61.8 with 677 auctions. So still auction numbers, volumes are down, but the results are pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's consistent to what you've been saying over the last few weeks, haven't you? That there's plenty of purchasers out there, and they're still actively buying. So the market's still quite strong. But I think, and again, I'm parroting what you said, that the vendors have been frightened away. Thinking that it's actually, it's not real good out there to be selling, but clearly that's not right.
Yeah, we're just about to put my mum's place on the market. So that's a family of real estate agents. So we're pretty confident with the way the market is right now.
That's
and
right.
I had to laugh. I spoke to my brother earlier today and he was talking to a buyer and the garden was just decimated in this house. And Kent said, looked at it and said, the only thing that grows out here is weeds. And the buyer said, well, weeds and Sydney property prices. He was surprised that a lot of buyers were expecting prices to be falling due to COVID, and in a lot of areas it just hasn't happened.
No.
So
it may bite in. It may bite in at some other time in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll happen, but I can't see it right now. If we look at the market here and now, I still have to say I think it's reasonably strong.
Well, certainly in Sydney, our 14.3%. The prices have grown in the last 12 months. So that's leading the country. The rest of Australia on average is 8.3%. So Sydney is leading the charge, as you would expect.
Exactly. Premiers, don't?
Yes, correct. Now, we did hear from Fair Trading around licensing. Then there's been a lot of questions around who needs to convert their certificate of registration into a license. So we've got a little bit more clarification on that now.
Yep. So are we talking about the licensee? I thought we were going to be chatting.
No, about bookkeepers.
Oh, sorry. So yes, thank you. Here we are. Yeah, our rehearsal could have been better, but anyway. That's true. We're dragging these things out like teeth. So we'd like to have a list to be able to publish, but unfortunately we haven't got that yet. But I think what it says to us is that if you're in an administrative or an accounting function or something like that, that's not real estate. Yeah. I would have thought that would be pretty obvious. It strikes me as being a little disappointing that it took so long to actually get that out.
Confirmation.
Yeah. Well, we have provided them with a list of things which we developed over many years, and just to recognise our friend from Reef who have also been involved in that. In fact, and Reef have driven that because of pay rates and pay scales. They had to understand who was an agent and who was an admin person. So they've done a lot of work in that area, and I thought their list was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've asked the question of Fair Trading and given them the answer. So we're just waiting on it to come back now.
Yeah, but we did have confirmation. Bookkeepers, trust accountants, those sorts of roles do not require a license. So that is good news.
Yes, it is.
So we're developing a tax policy off the back of, there's been a lot of conversations around, axe the tax, get rid of stamp duty and what that might mean. We're concerned that it might mean a broad-based land tax, which I know you don't mind so much, but the board of the REI doesn't like that idea at all. So we are developing a tax policy.
Yeah, look, when I say do I like it, no, I don't like it. I think that property, well, I'm sure that property shoulders a greater amount of the burden of the tax burden than other asset classes. When you look at the property transaction, it's got GST, and then it's got land tax and stamp duty, and it goes on and on and on, doesn't it? You have developer contributions and council rates, and these are the things I can think about.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look at the equities market, the only thing that is there is going to be capital gains. That's it, and of which we are also subject to. Yeah. So I think stamp duty is a dreadful tax because it is so narrow based. Because I didn't pay any stamp duty last year because I didn't buy any property. So what that tells me is, if I want to avoid the tax, don't buy property. It's not a very good message. So a broad-based tax is better than a narrow-based tax. So if I have to have a tax between stamp duty and land tax, then it's a broad-based tax. Do I like it? No. The other broad-based tax that is the obvious one is the GST. Now, it's broad-based because it doesn't only have land, it has everything. And I think that's where the REI board was saying that these things needed to go, was increasing the GST. And that was, I'm not sure whether or not the board came out with a recommendation saying this is what we want to do, but I think it was more of a case of saying this is where the conversation needs to start.
Yeah, that's right. We need to explore all the options. And as much as we don't like increasing any tax at all, I think we all have to be realistic and expect that the GST will increase. We've got to pay for everything that's gone on with COVID somehow. And if we can increase the GST and get rid of stamp duty, I think that would be a win for all of us. Yeah.
And we've been asking government to look at that for a gazillion years.
Yeah, a really long time.
So, and I think they weren't brave enough to look at it previously, but they are now with the crisis. You know, they've got a reason to go and have a look at it. So I think they're seizing on that, which is maybe we'll get a good tax outcome out of this debate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you wanted to talk about the contract for sale cooling off, yeah? Yes,
I did. Now the contract for sale of land has a standard cooling off period warning in there. Yeah. Now it changed today, so it's not a radical change, but it did change today.
Okay.
One of the areas that they're targeting was off the plan, but we don't need to be worried about it because the contract is prepared, or the person that has responsibility for it. The one that we're going to exchange is with the solicitors. However, I would make mention of it now, because if you've got a contract that's been lying around your office for a couple of weeks and you're saying, oh, good, I've got a buyer and I'm going to exchange it now, it may not be compliant. So if you've got one sitting around your office, just check with your solicitor or conveyancer that you've actually got the most up-to-date contract. Because if you haven't and there's things wrong with it, then it can have serious repercussions as
down the track.
As to whether or not it's enforceable and this and that and various other things. So a simple phone call might be the best thing to do. Yeah,
that's really good advice. Now, there's a lot of conversation at the moment around subsidies in the construction and maybe potentially for renovation, but there is no detail on this. There's no clarity on it, and really all it's doing is confusing people, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the board, I think when last week when this came up for discussion, I think they were very disappointed with people having these conversations. When I say people, I'm talking about government people like treasurers and prime ministers and premiers saying, oh, I think it'd be a good idea if this is what we did. Then all of a sudden, everybody in the market says, well, I'll wait until this happens. You know, clearly if the premier is saying that we're going to get rid of stamp duty, that I'll wait until that happens. And so these are, in my view, and I think the board is on the same page, very irresponsible conversations, because they're having a serious and adverse impact on the market decisions to buy and sell and general confidence. So you're right, these subsidies, this 50 grand or whatever we're currently dealing with, they're all good. They're all good things, but let's only mention it when it's going out.
Exactly, and we have gone back very strongly as part of the Real Estate Institute of Australia to Treasury and said, Exactly that. Only make these announcements once you can clarify the timeline, and if need be, you know, some announcement might have to be retrospective, even if they don't start for a year, like a month or so. They need to be retrospective back to the date. Otherwise, it has the opposite impact that they're looking for.
Yeah, it is a bit unusual what they're doing, because we're involved, as you know, with a lot of legislative and regulatory instruments, and they put the cone of silence over us and make us work with inside of that to take our temperature on what we think about how it would be received in the market and actually how it would work. Because they don't want to release any of that information too early for these very reasons, because of the adverse impact it may have. So it's quite bizarre that we're having this sort of public discussion about it and impacting the market. So hopefully really they'll see the wisdom in shutting up.
We've also had some news on rental subsidies today for low-income tenants. And so we will put out some information detailing that, a fact sheet on that with tomorrow's email. There'll be an EDM that goes out. But basically, tenants that are paying more than 25% of their wage on rent, the government will assist if they meet that low income criteria and if they have been impacted by COVID. So I won't go through all of the ifs, buts and maybes on that. We'll send a fact sheet out tomorrow to detail all of that.
Yeah, it just keeps coming, doesn't it?
It does. There's always something. There's always something. And we've got one of your favourite people as our webinar guest on Friday.
Yes, Chris Hanlon. Yes, it'd be great to listen to Chris. He's very inspiring. I find him that way anyway. For the first time I ever heard him, I thought he was just great, the way he was able to sum things up and you know, he has that persona about him to carry the audience. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. For those of you that don't know Chris, he is the principal of Byron Bay First National, and he's been an industry leader for over 4 decades, and he's also the brains behind the RISE program, which is all about mental health or mental well-being in the real estate industry. So that is going to be really interesting to hear how he and his team are navigating everything that's going on right now. You've also invited so that's Friday at 10:30 if you haven't already registered. Yep.
Correct.
And you've also asked a couple of special guests to come on to the webinar. Yes. So
I've invited the minister to come along and have a chat to us as well. I said that would be really, really valuable to get some vision about how the minister sees all of these problems, particularly in our sector, and to enlighten us as to how the minister is going to, and the government for that matter more generally, is going to be dealing with these problems. And what solutions they've got and what assistance we can give. And, you know, to quote the PM constantly, we're all in this together, so it'd be good to get that. And because we are an apolitical organisation, I've also extended the same invitation to the shadow minister as well in our space. And I certainly hope that she will join us as well. But it's interesting times, isn't it? Just on a slightly unrelated issue, we're talking about all the troubles out there. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours actually on the weekend, and he said to me that with his business, that he was working really hard not to comply, not to be able to comply with the requirements for JobKeeper. And I thought, that's really weird. And he said, no, I'm trying to remain profitable enough so I don't need it. And I thought, gee, that's a different way to look at it, isn't it? You know, and see if you, and I thought, that is really good, because there's so many of us, me included, who rushed back to the business and said, right, I need to be able to get this money. And I think a lot of people have had that attitude, and that's fair enough. But when you take a different approach and actually say, no, what I want to do is reshape my business in all of these troubles, and not need it, because that means I stand on my own 2 feet. I don't need any help, and good for me. And I thought, that's a really good attitude.
Yeah, it is. It's a great attitude. I love it. I've just got one more thing that I want to share with everybody. I've had an office that I've become aware of, an office who has just had a $70,000 cyber fraud situation. So basically, a salesperson clicked on something that they shouldn't, and the people have been lurking in the system for quite some time and just waiting to pounce. So I know that only a small percentage of officers actually have cyber insurance coverage. So I just wanted to it's a conversation we've had before, but this situation only happened last week. So it is stuff that is still going on. So I just wanted to put it out there and make people aware of it again.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, the time gap between we hear this one and when we hear the next one is narrowing down, isn't it?
Sadly, yeah. Sadly.
Yeah. We are hearing more and more about it.
Anything you want to share before we go?
No, I think we'll end on that rather dreary note of cybercrime. That's okay.
Alrighty, and so our next update is on Thursday. We're only going to do these twice a week moving forward. So Mondays and Thursdays, although next weekend being a long weekend, we'll slip one in on Tuesday. So we'll be back to you on Thursday, and look forward to catching up with everybody on the webinar with Chris on Friday.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
see you later.
Leanne.
Bye.
Good night. Goodbye.